Share via email. Report story. Chapter 7. To say that Ochako was nervous as she walked down to her friend's bakery would be an understatement. She had thought long and hard about what she was going to say, and even after rehearsing it several times, she still found it difficult to speak about it without stuttering. She just wanted to say it, to get those feelings out. Her visit to her family had been filled with thoughts of Izuku, often causing her to start daydreaming. "Sweetie, are you okay?" Her mom had asked her once, suddenly stopping Ochako's daydreaming. "Your head seems to be somewhere else." I'm fine," she quickly responded, her cheeks turning bright pink as she caught herself thinking about him again. "Are you sure?" "Why, yes. Is it a boy?" Ochako's eyes widened at how accurate her mom's guess had been, leaving her at a loss for words. Her mom just laughed it off and gave Ochako a knowing smile. That was the first and only time her mother had commented on the matter, much to Ochako's appreciation, but after that incident, she always smiled when she caught her daughter deep in thought. Her father, on the other hand, wouldn't comment on the matter, but she suspected it was because he was completely oblivious to the situation. When she finally arrived at her destination, Ochako doubted a single word would come out of her lips. She took a second to compose herself, breathing in deeply before knocking the store's door. "Who is it?" She heard the all too familiar voice coming from the inside. "It's me," she said cheerfully. "I came by to see you." Hearing Izuku again made her nervousness leave completely. She couldn't really understand why, but everything just felt better. As the door opened in front of her, simply seeing Izuku once more melted her heart, and before she knew it, she had thrown herself at him, embracing him tightly. "Hello, Midoriya," she said, not a hint of nervousness on her mind. "Hey Uraraka," Izuku responded. He was a complete blushing mess. She let out a tiny giggle as she looked at him. He just looked so cute while he struggled to put words together into a coherent sentence. She was just now starting to realize just how much she had missed this boy. Ochako let go of him and sat down at the table. She could not help but smile as she looked at him, still trying to find something to say but fumbling on his own words soon after. "Wait here," he said, finally recovered. "I have something for you." As soon as Izuku left the room, Ochako's heart started racing again. Seeing him again had made her completely forget why she was there in the first place. Now that she remembered, she was determined to let him know about her feelings. She ran the words through her head once again, fully determined to speak her mind the second he came back. She was at a complete loss for words then, when Izuku came back into the room with a platter, containing 6 strawberry shortcake slices, 2 plates, and 2 forks. Izuku started, his face getting redder by the second. "Since it was your birthday yesterday, I figured you would like these." "Are those those?" Ochako asked, pointing at them. Whatever she had to say earlier was going to have to wait. She wasn't able to say another word. "It's the first cake I've made. I tried all weekend long to make it right," he confessed. Ochako noticed he was fidgeting slightly as if he was as nervous as she had been just moments earlier. "Promoted stories. You'll also like." "I am." Sequel of UR check mark 69.4K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of UR, so better read that first before going here. Tears of Joy. Tears of Joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Free. Onishots 149K3K. This is a collections of free X readers. Requests on this are now closed. Finished. 8.3K 508 tilde. He save all of them, just a smile plastered on his face before disappearing through the wind. After all. Ohm Fluke 11.4K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings. Eng. Much needed love. Yandere Succubus Momo X Izu. 50.9K 797 after Wattpad had decided to delete this story out of nowhere. I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. Hurt cuz I love you to death. Izuocha. Ha. 0.8.6K 141 Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer as feelings. Aizawa. X-Reader 57.1K 1.3K RE posting. This until I edit it, sorry if it's not good, it's my first time writing a story. You enroll at UA and you have multiple quirks you are really good at using, why? She just looked at him, her mouth hanging open, unable to speak. She looked at the cake slices, then back at Izuku, then back at the cake slices. She was expecting a loaf of bread, not this. This was on a whole nother level. Maybe she thought for a moment, likes me too. She had never considered the possibility of that happening. She thought it was completely one-sided. But this gesture from Izuku was just too much for her. Please, help yourself, Izuku said, as nervous as Ochako had ever seen him. She picked up her fork and took off a piece. She looked at it for a second before putting it in her mouth. Put simply, it was the best thing she'd ever had. Midoriya? She asked, getting up from her seat to be somewhat level with Izuku. Why yes, he asked. She kept getting closer to him, her head looking down as she did. I, she said in a low voice, her face still looking downwards. She was frustrated with herself, she was just unable to find anything to say. You. He was interrupted when Ochako lifted her face up and rapidly closed the distance between them. You Uraraka? He asked. What are you? I'm sorry, I can't find the words to tell you. He was once again interrupted by her. Ochako, without a second thought, planted her lips on Izuku's. Dash 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 dot. It didn't last long before Ochako pulled back and looked down, her face a deep red. But she had finally done it. Even though she didn't actually say it, she was pretty sure the message had gotten across. It was the most daring thing she'd done in her life by a wide margin, but she was glad she had done it. She raised her head slightly to find a stunned Izuku looking at her, his face as red, if not more, as hers. You Uraraka? He asked, dumbfounded. Why yes, she asked embarrassed, thinking she had screwed everything up. Why did you? Because I like you. She quickly raised her head as she said this, her eyes filled with expectation. One moment passed, then another, but Izuku hadn't said anything back. He was still completely stunned at what had just occurred. Ochako's eyes started watering. I did it, she thought. I destroyed everything we had. She slowly turned around and headed for the door, her head down in embarrassment. She grabbed the door handle and opened it. There was still no answer from Izuku. It was raining outside, but she didn't notice. Even if she had, She didn't care about it at all. All she could think about was how she had destroyed her relationship with that boy completely. She took one step outside, then another. Then she walked out of the bakery. What did she just say? Izuku wondered, completely stunned. He blinked quickly a couple of times before he realized Ochako wasn't there anymore. He started panicking. He wanted to say something back to her. He frantically looked around the room, looking for the girl that wasn't there anymore. He saw the open door and the rain outside. His eyes widened in shock. But he did not stay still this time. He ran out the door as fast as he possibly could. He ran through the streets, only occasionally pausing for breath. Ochako was nowhere to be found, but he didn't give up. He had to make things right again. He continued running for as long as he could but saw no sign of her anywhere. Right when he was about to give up, he stopped at a park for breath. As he held onto a tree and breathed hard, he looked at the fountain in the middle of the park. There, he finally saw her, sitting at the edge, her face buried in her hands. Using all the strength he could muster, he ran towards her. Uraraka, he yelled, trying to get her attention. She stood up as he saw him running towards her. Izuku didn't even hesitate as he launched himself at Ochako, wrapping her arms tightly around her. I'm sorry, she said, burying her face into his chest as she sobbed. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, he responded, I should have told you. Ochako looked up at him in question, wondering what he could possibly be sorry about. I, he started saying, the raining beating down on both of them. I love you, Ruraka. Ochako was so happy she started crying even harder. Tears of sadness were now tears of joy as she sunk into Izuku's arms, embracing his warmth. They stayed that way for a while, not caring about the rain furiously beating down on them. But finally, Ochako looked up at him, her eyes red. We should probably go, she said with a giggle. We're going to be soaking wet. We should, he responded laughing, glad that everything was right in the world once more. Quickly, they made their way back to the bakery, laughing all the way as they ran through the rain. They arrived shortly after and quickly went in. Wait here, Izuku said before heading upstairs, leaving a wet trail behind him. Here, he said as he arrived with two towels, handing one off to Ochako. Use this. Thanks, she said, glad that she was able to dry herself off. The bathroom is upstairs. Just go in and I'll have something dry for you for when you come out. Okay, thank you. She quickly went upstairs. Shivering from the cold, Izuku dried himself off as best he could, before going back upstairs and getting changed. He just changed into one of his old tracksuits. The words, All Might, were printed on them. He got some thick, gray pants as well as a thick sweater out as well. It wasn't much, but it was simple and would keep Ochako warm. Plus he didn't really have any other clothes for her, so he had to make do with what he had. He left them right outside the door and then went to his living room. He got out a heater and placed it in front of the couch before sitting on it and finally relaxing. He was completely exhausted. He had never run so much and so fast in his entire life, but it was all worth it in the end. Ochako arrived at the living room shortly after. The sweater proved to be a little too big for her, so the sleeves made her hands unable to be seen. Sorry, Izuku said as he saw her. I didn't really have any others that were as warm. It's okay, she responded, waving her hand side to side. It's really warm. Izuku couldn't help but smile at how cute she looked with his old sweater on. Ochako moved towards the couch and sat next to Izuku. She let out a sigh of relief as the heat went through her. She rested her head on Izuku's chest and giggled. All Might? She asked. Yeah, I used to be a really big fan. He laughed a bit as well and wrapped an arm around Ochako, who was almost asleep. I think it looks cute on you. She mumbled exhaustedly, causing Izuku's cheeks to turn pink. He smiled and kissed her forehead, falling asleep himself. Good night, Izuku, was the last thing he heard before sleep got the best of him. Chapter 8. Izuku slowly opened his eyes, slowly becoming aware of his surroundings. He heard the sound of rain outside, and also the sound of soft breathing right below his head. He looked down and saw the all too familiar brown hair that he had grown to love. His face immediately grew hot. He had just begun to realize the full scope of what had happened the day before. He had confessed to Ochako, and they had just slept together on his couch. He relaxed for a bit, realizing how warm Ochako felt when she was that close. He wondered if that's how heaven felt like. Realizing it was a Tuesday, Izuku tried to get up without waking Ochako up, but failed and heard a confused noise coming from her. Izuku, she asked, unaware of her surroundings. Gee, good morning, Uraraka, he stuttered, unsure of what to do. Ochako blinked a couple of times before completely realizing where she was and what she was doing. She sat up almost immediately, looking down, her face resembling the color of a tomato. I'm sorry, she managed to get out. I didn't think I'd actually fall asleep on you. It's okay. Izuku quickly responded as he stood up, his face as flushed as hers. They stayed this way for a bit, both of them too embarrassed to say anything to each other. Both of them started slowly recalling the events from the previous day and were finally able to comprehend the situation they were in. I'm sorry for running off yesterday. Ochako finally spoke, her expression now more of regret than embarrassment. No, Izuku quickly replied. I'm sorry for not saying anything before. No, I did that out of the blue. No, I'm glad that you did. Both of them laughed at this. It could have gone on for the rest of the day before one of them would accept the other's apology. Ochako took this as an opportunity to move closer to Izuku and hug him. She hadn't realized it before, but Izuku was actually quite a bit taller than her. His head surpassed hers almost completely. She didn't mind though. He was just the perfect height for her to bury her head in his neck. Wait, Izuku said, causing Ochako to look up. What time is it? Ochako looked at him, puzzled, before looking at her watch. 6:30. Why, 6:30? He asked in disbelief, before running off to his room. What happened? Ochako asked, part of her disappointed at the fact that the moment they just had was over so quickly. I should have woken up an hour ago. He came out of his room soon after, wearing his usual apron, before running down the stairs, almost tripping in the process. Ochako laughed at his clumsiness but soon decided she could maybe lend a hand to Izuku, so she changed into her now dry clothes and walked downstairs. Izuku was running around the kitchen, getting every ingredient he needed before getting to work. He started mixing all the ingredients quickly, but Ochako observed he was still very calm and careful. He was trying not to bring down the quality of the bread, even if he had to rush. He put them in the oven and waited for the pieces of dough. It wouldn't take long, but time wasn't on his side at the moment. Is there anything I can do to help? Ochako asked. Yeah, we might be able to open on time if we have two people. Okay, she said, excited to get to work. What should I do? Well, the dough isn't ready to knead yet, so let's get you an apron. He motioned for Ochako to wait where she was, before running up the stairs quickly. As he left, Ochako started thinking about that morning. Everything had felt so nice, so perfect, so right. She had just wanted it to last a little bit longer. But before she could think more about it, Izuku came back down with a white apron in his hands. Here you go, he said, holding it out to her. This'll do just fine. Thank you, Ochako said as she put it on. How do I look? Beautiful. Ochako looked at him wide-eyed. She hadn't been expecting that at all. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Izuku stuttered. He had just realized that he had talked without thinking about it, but it's not like you're not beautiful, it's just that I didn't realize I said that out loud. Ochako smiled at the blushing mess that was Izuku, which made her less flustered herself. Thank you, she said, her cheeks still a soft pink. Now, what do we do? Izuku looked at her, puzzled, then realized he still had a bakery to attend to. Oh yes. He opened the oven and took out the dough. Help me knead these, please. Sure, Ochako said as Izuku placed the dough in front of her. She looked at it and asked, how do I do this? Izuku looked at her and let out an easy laugh. Of course you wouldn't know. He moved next to her and smiled. I'll teach you. So, he said as he brought a piece of dough of his own and started kneading it gently. All you really want to do is be gentle, and make sure that you can do everything perfectly. Take your time if you need to. Just make sure it's as good as it can possibly be. Ochako looked at how Izuku was doing it, gently, calmly, but still with an amazing efficiency. Every movement he did was simple, but it was caring, gentle, as he tried not to bring down the quality of the finished product. But well, nothing beats practice. Izuku interrupted Ochako's thoughts just as she was getting the hang of watching his technique. Let's just both do it at the same time. She started kneading it as gently as she could, often looking at Izuku and trying to replicate what he was doing. She wasn't as fast as him, of course, but she was able to slowly mimic his movements, in her own time. Of course, Izuku said it didn't matter. It was tough at first, but after getting some tips from him, she had a pretty good grasp on the activity. After they kneaded the dough, they placed the different balls inside buttered bowls, covering them with a plastic sheet afterward and leaving them to rise. You did really well, Izuku complimented her. I'm astounded. Thank you, Ochako replied, a large smile on her face thanks to the compliment. I had a really good teacher after all. Thank you, Uraraka, he said. I'm glad I could teach you something. Hey, Izuku, she asked him, a small blush growing on her face. Why, yeah, he asked. Could you, she hesitated, call me Ochako? See, call you by your first name. He stuttered, flustered to no end. Why, yeah, sure, he said, then hesitated. Oh, Ochako. Her face grew a bright red. She didn't know why, but it just sounded better when it came from him. Gee, thank you, she managed to say. They stayed that way for a while, both of them too embarrassed to say anything. Oh, okay, Izuku finally said. Let's go make coffee. Sure, Ochako responded, glad that there was something else to do. Making coffee was fairly easy for both of them, so there wasn't a big explanation from Izuku that was needed. They just made sure that everything they were doing was made perfectly. After they were done, the dough was ready to be kneaded again, so they went back into the kitchen and picked up the balls of dough. This time Ochako was a little faster. Gaining confidence in her abilities and Izuku's positive reinforcement only made her get better at it. After they finished and left the dough to rise, they went out of the kitchen and into the shop, because customers would start to arrive soon. It wasn't long until the first couple of people showed up after all. It was the morning routine of many, and some would arrive early to get their hands on the first batch of freshly baked bread. Izuku offered them a cup of coffee and apologized a million times for the delay, which caused everyone to laugh at the boy. No one was in an incredible hurry, so Izuku together with Ochako made small talk with the customers. It wasn't long before the bread needed to be put in the oven, and after just 15 minutes, the bread was baked and ready to be sold. Ochako helped to put the bread on the different baskets around the store, but the customers that had already arrived made quick work of them, buying them and then leaving the store shortly after. The rest of Izuku's morning was as always. He'd sell to all the customers that arrived, and baked every batch that he had prepared for the morning. But this morning was different. By just being there, Ochako made such a mundane experience amazing. Izuku's cheeks would grow hot every time he heard Ochako's laughter ring through the store, as she was talking with some of the customers waiting in line. She was also really useful to the store, helping to serve coffee to whoever needed it or by simply improving the atmosphere of the whole place in general. Finally, when the last bread was sold, Izuku closed the shop. They stayed inside with Ochako, as it was still pouring rain outside, so it didn't look too well to go for a run either. So instead, Izuku and Ochako took off their aprons and went upstairs. They slumped onto the couch, tired from all the work they had done. Ochako moved close to Izuku and rested her head on his shoulder, letting out a long breath. "Thank you for helping me out," Izuku said. "It really means a lot to me." "Don't worry about it," Ochako said. "I was the reason why you overslept after all." "But still," Izuku said, wrapping his arm around her, "you were a great help. You can always count on me." She smiled. "I have to admit it was fun." "But isn't being a hero fun?" Izuku asked, curious. "It is." Her voice dropped ever so slightly. "It's just hard sometimes." "Oh," Izuku said, regretting having asked in the first place. They stayed silent for a bit, both of them not knowing what to say to improve the situation, so they just enjoyed each other's company. "You know," Izuku said afterward, changing the topic, "I was thinking of trying to bake something else today." "Really?" Ochako asked, sitting up excitedly. "What is it?" "Well, I wanted to start making sweet things," he tried to explain, "like the strawberry shortcake I made." Ochako closed her eyes and smiled. That shortcake was one of the best she'd ever have, and she knew just how much effort Izuku put into it. "I want to expand the bakery a little bit, to also sell something else." He started talking again, snapping Ochako back to her senses. "But I don't know if it'll be good. I want to do a test run today." "That sounds great," Ochako said, even more excited. "What are you planning on making?" "Well, I wanted something simple that also tastes great." "Another cake?" "No, I was thinking smaller." He thought for a moment. "Like cinnamon rolls." "That sounds amazing, Izuku." Her face completely lit up. "I love those." "Really?" Izuku asked. "Yup." She smiled again, this time even wider. "Can I help?" "Of course," Izuku said. Some of the cooking books Izuku had bought a couple of days prior weren't only of cakes, but also sweets, so there was a couple of recipes that would help their new operation. They read the books for the recipe for the better part of an hour, but it looked as if making them was easy enough, so they wasted no time in getting to work. Izuku already had most of the ingredients available, because they were very similar to the ones he used to make bread, and also he already had cinnamon and vanilla in his kitchen, which he rarely used. so they didn't have to waste time going out to buy them. Okay, Izuku said. Let's start off trying to make the dough. He gave Ochako a mixer he had in his kitchen and started handing the various ingredients to her. She first mixed milk with sugar, salt, butter and an egg. Once this was done, she added flour to it and turned on the mixer. They waited until the dough stopped sticking to the bowl before getting it out. Both of them felt the dough out and decided that it wasn't up to their expectations. For the next 2 hours, they tried to make the dough as well as perfect as they wanted it to be, but it was a futile endeavor. So they decided to take a break to figure out what was wrong. Wait, I think I got it, Ochako said. 15 minutes into looking at the books, we forgot to add yeast. Izuku looked at her and couldn't help but laugh. They had wasted so many ingredients, and all of that was simply because he forgot to add one. They laughed about it for a while before getting back to work. On their first try, they got it just how they wanted it to be, so they put the dough in a lightly greased bowl and covered it, waiting for it to rise. While they were waiting, Izuku started to count the profits he had made in the morning. It was the same as usual, as he wouldn't normally be able to make more than that amount of bread. He also gave a call to the people that delivered the ingredients and asked them to bring him more tomorrow, as he was close to running out with how much he had wasted earlier. Meanwhile, Ochako prepared the fillings for the cinnamon rolls. She started off by melting butter and putting it in a bowl, along with a brush for it. Then she grabbed the cinnamon and the sugar, mixing them in a bowl as well. Finally, the dough was ready, so they stretched it out on the counter and brushed the butter on top of it, adding the cinnamon and sugar mix later. Once that was done, they rolled up the dough into one long cylinder, but soon cut it into smaller pieces, as a cinnamon roll would be. Izuku had to start preparing more bread because more customers would arrive soon. He only needed to put the dough in the oven and then take it out so he could sell it. So while Izuku did that, Ochako put the rolls in a lightly greased pan and covered them so they would rise. And while they did, she started working on the glaze she would put on them. Ochako mixed together sugar, butter, and vanilla. She only put half the milk that she had, and then she started slowly adding the rest to thicken the glaze. Hey, Izuku, she asked as she was almost done, can you help me with this? Sure. What is it? Izuku said as he looked at the oven. The bread was about to be ready. I need to check on how the rolls are. Would you mind mixing this for me? Ochako gave him the bowl with the half-mixed ingredients before going to check the pan she had set aside. Izuku started to mix quickly since the bread would be done in no time. A tiny bit of the glaze flew off, but he paid it no mind. Done? Ochako asked as she came back. Back. Yeah, Izuku responded, giving the bowl back to her. Here you go. He went back to the oven and started taking the bread out. He had arrived just in time. He scattered the pieces of bread around the several baskets that were in the store and put a cloth over them so they wouldn't lose their warmth. When Izuku came back into the kitchen, Ochako was putting the cinnamon rolls in the oven. She was going to add the glaze afterward. How are the rolls? Izuku asked. They're looking amazing. I'm so excited to try one out. She responded, but she started to giggle when he looked at Izuku's face. What is it? He asked, puzzled. You got some. She pointed at her face with her finger. which made Izuku all the more confused. I got some what? He asked again, completely lost. Oh, I'll take care of it, Ochako said, moving closer to him. Izuku looked at her puzzled. She simply giggled and gave him a kiss on the cheek. What was that for? He exclaimed, taken completely off guard. You had some glaze on your cheek, she said, still giggling a bit. BB, but you could have told me. He stuttered, his face turning a furious red. I know, she said, but she laughed even harder. She loved seeing him flustered like that. Well, you got some too, Izuku said, moving closer to Ochako. Where? She asked, touching both of her cheeks and not feeling anything. Here, he said, leaning in to kiss her lips. Now Ochako was a flustered mess. She was unable to say anything at the time. She didn't think Izuku would do something like that. Sorry, he said, moving back. Was that too much? Ochako looked at him, who was unsure if he had done something wrong, and couldn't help but smile at his embarrassed face. No, she said as she moved closer to him. It was perfect. She smiled as Izuku struggled to say anything at all, and a knock on the door is what saved him. See coming, he said, slipping away in embarrassment. He opened the door and found one of his customers standing there in the rain. Are you open? She asked. Why, yes. Please come in. I have something special today, he said, trying his best to hide his embarrassment from the customer. More and more customers started to arrive, buying the bread Izuku had put out. When they were ready and glazed, Ochako took out the cinnamon rolls and put them in the shop for sale. They sold unbelievably quickly, even though they had made more than 2 dozen. When the last piece of bread was sold, Izuku decided to close the shop once again, taking off his apron and taking out his umbrella. He told Ochako, do you want me to walk you home? Sure, she said, taking off her own apron and standing next to Izuku under the umbrella. They walked to her apartment, close under the umbrella so neither of them got wet. It was a slow walk. They tried to spend as much time with each other as they could, but before they wanted to, they arrived at her apartment. Thank you for walking me back, Izuku, Ochako said as she opened the door. Today was a lot of fun, tending to the store. Thank you so much for helping me, Izuku said. It means a lot to me. Ochako smiled and wrapped her arms around Izuku, giving him a gentle kiss on the lips. Hey, Izuku, Ochako said, hugging him. Yeah, I love you. Izuku felt his face get hot but spoke anyway. I love you to Ura. He caught himself right before he said that. I mean, Ochako. Ochako. She let go of him and smiled, waving as she entered her building. Izuku watched her until she was out of sight, then started the walk home. He whistled the whole way, truly happy for the very first time in ages. Where stories live. Discover now.